there's a Q&A feature here. So any questions you have, dump them into the questions and answers. It's in like the sidebar at the bottom. There's like a Q&A feature, and you can see, in fact, I need to pull it up here as well. Great. I don't know where mine went. Mine disappeared. I'll find a way to bring it back. I can see the chat though. But I'll be going through the Q&A list. There we go. It's back. And trying to answer things in there. If there's too many things, we can answer. Some of our team is on here as panelists too, and they can help answer things async and type answers there. But I'll try to answer as many live as possible. And there's a few super common questions I'll address too. As a quick bit of background, hi, I'm Steve. I'm our co-founder and CEO. I've been working very closely on this Fusion project because we've seen a lot of interest and a lot of pull from the market. We're getting a major acceleration in adoption, which is exciting. And why don't I give you the really quick background here as well of what we're seeing happening. So the big thing that we're seeing is we see a huge amount of traction in the AI IDEs. So organizations of all scales, from hobbyists to everybody in a massive organization, are adopting GitHub Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, et cetera. Like those things just work. They just plug in any project, any size, any scale, any legacy, whatever. It doesn't matter. They just work. Apologies, I think my video cut out. Hopefully you can still hear me. Okay, I think we're back. That's amazing. But then in the bottom right corner, we see a huge amount of people obsessed with like these just write in the browser, write a prompt, get an app tools. I mean, it's incredible how awesome and easy to use something like that is. The problem though is we see they're most adopted by solopreneurs, hobbyists, weekend projects, because unlike the AI IDEs, they don't actually connect to your existing code bases, your custom design systems, your internal APIs that you need to use, and the workflows you need, which if you work with a team, you work in terms of pull requests. You don't just like push things to main or create repos outside of the realm of GitHub or GitLab or anything like that. And so I want to talk a little bit about Fusion and like answer your questions on like, okay, if you got something that's like a bolt, but it connects to my repos like Cursor, that usually opens a lot of questions around teams and workflows and how do I use this, right? Suddenly, everybody can just vibe code. We can have designers, product managers, or any dev on the team create pull requests for any type of thing. What should the workflow be? When should I use that? What should I use that for? How is that different than Convex or Cursor agents or whatever? I'm going to do a little bit of sort of like maybe whiteboarding here too, maybe demos and whiteboarding. So I have this kind of starting off point that I want to provide here, which is like, here's what I'm starting to call this tool and tools like this. This is actually, I think first proposed by one of our team members who's here on as a kind of background panelist. But, you know, you really have two things. You have your IDE, your integrated development environments. So that is your cursor. Ew, that green color is awful. That's better. Let's give us a little sloppiness. So that's going to be like your, let's double click here, Cursor, Copilot, Windsurf. Amazing for day-to-day development tasks. Now these require you to have, and let's make these fonts a little bit better. Let's make this nice and large. Ooh, that's better. That's better. That's better. Sorry, forgive me how particular I am about the nuances here and the sizing of stuff. Cool. Great. So these are IDEs. These are fantastic for day-to-day coding tasks, refactors. There's a million sort of day-to-day needs, and they're beautiful because they work right into your workflow. You're already using an IDE. And forgive me, some people call these just code editors and IDEs, whatever. We're talking about a development tool for day-to-day development. These aren't necessarily super specialized in the front end. I think Windsurf tries to carve off a little bit of a niche there, but doesn't go that deep. And these things, again, awesome. Workhorses for any day-to-day developer. It requires that you have a local development environment. So that's a requirement. Local dev environments. You are deeply familiar with, you know, Git workflows, clone, merge, rebase, push, etc. You need to be a developer. You have to be able to read and write code. You need to read and write the type of code that you're working with. So another common thing we see is somebody is a backend dev working on the front end, or you just came from this other team and you need to use this new design system that you're not familiar with. And so you need to be, you know, code familiar with everything you're working with. And generally speaking, like you need to be given full, you know, as much detail as possible on like what needs to be done. You need to provide it. You need to be, you could use an MCP server to provide, a Jira ticket directly. It's pretty cool. Um, and what I'm starting to call this other world, and so with this context, I'll jump into answering questions here. I'm calling it visual development environments. So a VDE, a visual development environments. This is going to be like Fusion by Builder. You could put others in this camp like Bolt or V0 or Lovable in some ways. But again, the big difference is a lot of the VDEs, if you want to call them that, or vibe, you could call it vibe coding tools, but like that's a little bit of a hypey name that I don't think is going to last forever. A lot of them do not work great for a large scale code base or an existing repository. But what they can do is just in browser. So they just work in your browser. You don't need a development environment. You just get one by opening up a browser tab. You do not need to know. You don't like code familiarity is not a requirement. You can be a designer, product manager. You can be someone who focuses on other parts of the code base and just vibe code out a UI or something. Um, let's talk more about our ideal. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to restrict ourselves just to the others. Let's talk about Fusion and where we actually really focus on setting apart. So code familiarity not required. What you really want in one of these is a deep Figma integration, a very deep integration with the design tools. You want to have a deep design system understanding that you can easily kind of like run, index, and control. And you want to be using your existing workflows. So pull requests, GitHub or GitLab or GitHub Enterprise or Bitbuckets, Azure ADO, etc. Sending pull requests, all of that stuff. So then the question becomes like, how do our teams adopt this? What does this change? And I'll get into that. But I want to make sure we're kind of like starting with questions from the chat. First one I'll answer super easy, which is, will we be sending out a recording of this? Yes. Everyone here, everybody that's signed up, you'll get a recording of this after the fact. So perfect. Here's a good one. Okay. So Richard asks, so Fusion currently highlights React, Next.js, Vue, Angular, etc. support. Is there official support for Flutter yet? And if not, what's the roadmap for Flutter support, if there is going to be one? And how soon can we expect it? What is the extent of tasks we can do regarding Figma to Flutter code with Fusion? So this is a great question. So let's break Fusion down into two key pieces. There is, so let's go in here and let's map this out. There is the UIs, excuse me, UIs, and there's the CLIs. So the CLI is for developers only. Developers only. The UI can be used by both developers and anyone else in the team. Product and design are the most common, but it could be marketing, other business stakeholders, etc. CLI is used for developers. CLI supports literally any tech stack. Now, our latest version of the CLI, which you can actually get to from our latest smart export feature can be used literally any tech stack. Flutter, totally fine. Convert Figma designs to Flutter, supported. Native iOS, supported. Kotlin, all of those, 100% supported. You do these from your terminal, you hit smart export, you'll get a CLI right here, just run that. The only thing you have to know is you need to have Node.js installed on your system. That's how these npx command works, and under the head, it's running JavaScript as part of the toolchain, but you don't need to have a JavaScript app. It could be Flutter. So the short answer is the big use case here for the CLI side is Figma to code for devs. This is going to support all tech stacks, truly. Java, fine. It doesn't matter. And most importantly, always run the CLI within your existing code base. I see people being like, oh, I want to make a separate code base and I'll generate it there, then migrate it. Would not recommend that. The way these AI tools work well is they can see your code. AI is very good at replicating things it sees. So it can see the way you structure and name files, the way you name components, the way you create types and props, and what libraries and styling systems you use, what tokens you use, what components you use, all of that. And all of this, I mean, a lot of the features, the UI and CLI are the same under the hood. So design system integration, all that is supported across the board. So I'll go ahead and mark that one off. Let's try and go roughly in order. Let's see. So one question from the top. So your design editor that can instantly make changes to code is amazing. Cool. Thank you. I would like to create a code from the design using Builder so that through the visual editor, our content manager could change the text or image. What would you recommend so as not to waste a lot of paid AI requests? Or is it better to use a separate admin panel to change the content? This is a super great question. And so what I would do, I also see Todd is typing a question. Todd, I'll answer this one live. You don't have to worry about typing an answer here. Looks like when somebody's starting to type, I can't mark it as will be answered live. There we go. Now I can. So the I would say so. There's really two layers here. So let's step back. I have a repository. I need someone to just make copy and image updates. What do I do? Let's take an example. And should I use Fusion or should I use another system? I would generally say the beauty of Fusion is there's zero integration. Any other system requires an integration, a build out a set of schemas and forms and access. They can be less visual. They kind of have a set of lock-in. You're locked into building your own admin or using a headless CMS. For what it's worth, Builder has a very nice native headless CMS that can be integrated into all of this. But let's literally just say marketing wants to change this right here. This is our homepage. And like the beautiful thing is if you just use Fusion and just say, hey, your marketing team member can open up this repository and make these changes, they can go in and change anything they want. So hello world, my new text. If I want another button, I hit duplicate, I can add a little space. I can do all of this using the visual editor and UIs. Amazing. Change the copy, hello world. Change where it links to. Let's link it out to, let's go to, slash hello world, all this stuff. And then I can add another prompt too, like let's say add an FAQ accordion below this. My experience is anytime you try and structure what another team member is able to do, oh, marketing, you can edit this title and description. The next question is like, great, how do I add another button? Like, oh, there's no field in the admin or the headless CMS for that button. Or they're like, what if I want to add another section? It's like, oh, there isn't. The beauty of Fusion is with no integration, and this is like a beauty of visual development in the latest sort of like AI, LLM age that we're in now, is you don't need to have hard set rules going in. You can let people apply the visual updates. So this is my updates now applied to the code. It applied all my visual updates that I did right in the visual editor. Amazing. Copy changes, upload new image, all of that is supported. And now it's adding the additional thing, which is the FAQ accordion. And the beautiful thing is I didn't have to design an FAQ accordion. I didn't have to have a design for an FAQ accordion. I just knew we need an FAQ accordion. It's going to build me one that's on brand based on my prompt. So here's my on brand FAQ accordion. We didn't even have components for this, but it created them. If we look at the code for those developers, let's look at the code of this and go to components, homepage content, and let's see what we added. We can look at a diff of what changed here. And here we go. We have our FAQ item, a list here. It built out this nice accordion with FAQ items, with their state. I think it did a nice job. And I can use the AI in this format or a pull request format. So for those unfamiliar with Fusion, once your marketer creates their changes, just like a developer would, you just send a pull request to the repository. You'll see all of the code there. And you can comment on it. If you want anything different, we can go to the files changed. As a developer, I can say that, let's say, let's tag the builder bots, builder IAO bots, and say, move this to be a reusable component in its own file, and just add the comments. And now we can change up the code any way we like. The only time I'd recommend introducing an external system, like we know how well coding works just out of the box for any of these things. And we know how well AI works when it's given enough example code, etc. And so you could just use it out of the box, get pull requests and merge them. When you should bring another system into place is when there's just too many updates and too many pull requests. So let's say your marketing team wants to make 5 updates to the homepage a day. That's a little bit tedious. That's where you could build your own admin tool, or you can use Builder CMS, which actually gives you the same AI and visual editing, but in a confined region. So this is sort of kind of thinking through workflows over time. Like if we expand on this chart, I just showed the UI workflow. So that could be anyone. This is best with, this technically supports any tech stack, but it's best with web technologies today because we preview. The obvious reasons we preview right here in iframe. So we're rendering the web result so you can have a visual canvas to work with, which works well for these visual tools. Like let people see it visually like a product like Figma. We are experimenting with full-on native support. So I do have a separate experiment of like actually we're previewing a native app and we're updating Swift UI code, Flutter code, etc. Or if you use Flutter Web, you can use the Flutter Web preview, which is pretty cool as well. Um, but if we go back over to our diagram, so anyone can use the UI. This is sort of like any use case. This can be web app development, web app dev, prototyping, internal tools, all of that. We see people within Builder creating all kinds of things. And this is best today, best with web tech. Anything that has a website URL that you can preview and iterate on. So the thing I want to talk about is there's one last thing to know, which is yeah, we get too many pull requests. There's too many marketing requests. You can use uh, Builder has also a headless CMS with all the same AI and visual editing. So what it can do is you can actually make it, and you can actually tell Fusion to do this for you. It's kind of cool. You can carve off a part of your homepage, like let's say between the header and footer, let's say this region of our homepage. What you could do is tell Fusion to integrate the Builder CMS. And now this part of the homepage can actually be published without pull requests. So you can jump into the same AI, you can use drag and drop, you can use structured data, and marketing or whoever can make, 100 updates per day, and they just publish those live. When we integrate Builder, what we do is we integrate this Builder content component. So this whole region gets extracted into data that gets stored in a database. Like we can actually literally we take the contents of this page and pull it to be data. And so we make a clone of it. We then delete it from the code, at least the composition here, and add the Builder content component. And this comes from our content API as well. So our content API feeds the content component, and you can start doing things like A/B testing, personalization, all kinds of really cool dynamic content. So that's something to know. This we call publish, Builder publish, and that's a cool use case for cases where you need to make more updates than you have time for pull requests. But let's put that off to the side for now. That's just related to this question. For now, I would say the easiest starting point is literally just starting with Fusion, sending these pull requests. Let's take a look at if the AI addressed our feedback effectively. So it says it moved the FAQ functionality to a new component. Let's see if it did that. Great. Here's our FAQ components. I see it here. And then let's see if we're utilizing the components. Let's see, FAQ. Cool. There it is being utilized. Perfect. And it looks like great. And it moved the FAQs themselves to be a prop. So it's passing in these as a prop. I think that's pretty well structured. Let me mark that off and let me go through some more questions. JP says, I noticed in your initial presentation, the tool had made the customer list basically hard-coded within the editor. Was that intentional or is that just a miss? Good question. JP, would you be able to elaborate on that one, maybe in the chat? So the thing to know is that Fusion will replicate the patterns it sees in the code base. So if all content like lists is coming from APIs, a headless CMS or something like that, it's going to use that. If most content is literally just coming from hard-coded content onto a page, it's going to replicate that. So, and a lot of times I show a variety of different repositories that I'm editing. Some use very, very scalable best practices, some don't. And that's a common question we get. Hey, if I'm using not a design system at all, I'm just got CSS all over the place, can it work with that? And the answer is absolutely. And it can replicate the same way you write CSS, the same type of styling, whether or not using systems and tokens and all of that. But if we do use a strict design system, we use strict abstractions between data and components, we use Redux for the state management. Can it do that? The answer is yes. And that's by essence of like this came up in a call today. The way to think about this visual development environment of Fusion is think of it as taking the exact same underlying fundamental architecture that Cursor, Copilot, Windsurf, Claude Code use and applying it to the sort of visual environment. So what that means is we're taking all of that handles robust, complex systems with any type of way it writes code, any type of language. We didn't invent that. That's coming from both these latest state-of-the-art AI models. We use Claude Sonnet 4 primarily. You can plug in your own model and plug in your own keys if you like to. And we plug them into workflows just like these IDEs, but we do it in a way that brings things end-to-end visual. So that not just makes it so that we can give access to our design team, our product management team, et cetera, but it also means it has a deeper understanding. When you're turning a Figma design into code and saying this design should update this UI that I have in the browser here, it's aware of the current state down to every div and HTML element rendered, every component that's on the screen right now and their state and their props. It knows very detailed information, any console errors and network errors that have occurred in the session, and it feeds all that as context to the AI. So as the IDE tries to be pretty decoupled, or even like the Figma MCP tries to be a very decoupled piece to be composed into other pieces, this system is end-to-end knowledgeable and can use all of that to give the best quality outputs, regardless of sort of the state at which you're kind of coming in. So let's mark that off. One good question is, can Builder.io consume private NPM packages to read as context for Fusion? The answer is yes, absolutely. And so the NPM packages from your own registry, the way to think about this is we're taking the development environment we already use locally, and we're just putting it in a Docker container. And so the same way your developers and development environments would set up your private registry and how you access it and authentication and any of that, just like you would add in your CI/CD environment too. You would do the same thing in Fusion. Think about Fusion a lot like a CI/CD environment where you're going to provide those environment variables, registries, keys, it can download it. Now, how does it see the design system? So that's where we recommend workspaces. So workspaces in the visual development environment actually works a lot like the IDE in that you can add multiple repositories to a workspace. So what that means is, let's say I'm going in and I want to edit this project. What I can do is I can add as many additional repositories as I like into this workspace. So I can go ahead and say, hey, I also want this Technopalooza demo or the design system. We can add all these repositories and add additional instructions and say, hey, our design system is source is over in Technopalooza demo. Look at the stories.jsx files to see how to use the design system correctly. And then what we do is we actually use multi-agents, and we actually can set an agent swarm against that. What that means is we have sub-agents and parallel agents look through that entire design system, summarize the findings relative to the given prompt. Like I'm building a CRM dashboard, we can look at everything in the design system around search, filtering, data grids, and visualization, all the best practice and documentation, and we're going to feed that in as context. And that happens in parallel because we use separate agents. So it's a multi-agent orchestration system, and use that. And so that's how we're able to feed in the additional context from the design system, regardless if it's from private packages, private repos, any of that stuff. Okay, let's kind of keep going through some questions. I already answered one of these. Let me answer one here, which is about sort of like workflows. So how do I adopt this? There's a few different workflows that you can use here. We'll get back to the publish workflow in a minute here too. So the workflows you could use, here's common things that we've seen. A very simple one. Today you have, this is a very simple one. Day to day, you have requirements like a ticket, which goes to, let's use boxes to represent humans right here. Requirements go to developer, go to pull request. Yoink, 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 pull request. One thing you do is just speed up this process directly. If you are doing Figma to code workflows and you needed to have deep knowledge of your design systems, component libraries, design tokens, and you want to have full control and customization over that, things like design token mapping, component mapping, this repo indexing we do, workspaces that we've talked about. This stuff is not that complicated to set up too, by the way. I list out all the features. Most people, it works pretty well, like pretty great out of the box, and you can add another thing or two if you find it's needed. But this is a very simple one. Literally just accelerate the development process. Whether that is, let's say the requirement is a design, or let's say the requirement is just a new UI, right? When I'm in here and I'm just like, hey, I want an FAQ, and I want the FAQ to follow our best practices and follow our conventions, our patterns. Some people have well-defined patterns, or in atomic design speak, organisms, compositions of components that are best practices to be used. Those can all be fed as context. So you don't have to be a UX expert or any knowledge of the brand or design system, and we'll just produce it for you. Because a lot of times developers get tickets which are like, solve this bug. And it turns out solving the bug means adding a new modal or a popover or a button. What is the right popover to use and when and how? And what is the correct UX pattern? Should it be a popover? Should it be a modal? In a lot of cases, you can just prompt those and just have it happen. And so just like you saw here, there's a lot of things I didn't have to worry about that it just produced for me. This looks good. Let's test that it's responsive for all the different screen sizes. Looks great. Every single detail looks pretty good here to me. And I can go ahead and just send that pull request. So this is a lot of just accelerate the development flow from design, from tickets, or also say prototype. Let's say somebody says, hey, can you do an exploration on this topic? You can just produce a prototype. Now, the next way you can do this, and so I'll just use this to say, hey, we're just accelerating the exact flow we have. Let's take one other example of taking our existing workflow, but accelerating that. This one, I'm going to talk about sort of design review. So we've got requirements, design ticket, whatever. I'll say this is probably less in the prototyping, but maybe, but more like designs and tickets and that stuff. And let's say you have the design team do a review. They do redlining. They review everything and they realize actually the spacing's not quite right. This responsive detail is not spot on. We actually want to have a transition here. There's a lot of implied stuff in designs that is not always conveyed in the design. Very nuanced responsiveness, transitions between states. That stuff gets lost in the Figma prototypes. And so one here is whereas traditionally you do a redlining process, developer asks the designer to review, designer creates a bunch of screenshots, a bunch of red lines. This padding should be different. This should actually be over here. On this screen state, you should do it a little differently. Really painful process. And then you get this whole thing, the developers again, the designer might review again. Is honestly, I've been on both sides of that in my career. I've hated being on either side. It's a horrible process. So instead of the old way, which is usually designer, developer, back to design, back to develop, blah, 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 through a loop, instead what you can do is instead of, and this happens, we do this all the time in Builder and our customers do it too. When the developer builds a thing, then you have the designer go in and make tweaks. So let's go in here and let's say we did that here. So the developer builds the thing. Here's my FAQ accordion. But perhaps the designer wants to make some changes. They can come in here and use the design mode, work off the same exact branch I'm working off of. And let's say we want to make it so that the expansion panel here has a couple changes. Let's go in, and I really should hook up design tokens here because you can have this hooked up to use only your unique design tokens. But let's say we want to have this sort of like off-white, oops, not for the typography. I want the background here to be just slightly off-white. Oops, sorry, don't want an image. I just want a background color. I don't know why it's not letting me choose that. Maybe I want this option. Okay, I've got some, I love to mess up my local environment. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go into raw mode. And I'm going to say I want background to be, let's say, E. Cool. And with that, I realized I actually want a little bit of padding here to be different too. So let's up the padding here a little bit. That looks pretty nice. I think E is a little bit too harsh. So let's go like F A. Cool, that's a little bit better. And maybe we're going to add a border top as well. And so maybe we'll do a border in all directions. So I'll just say border, 1 pixel. Let's bring this down. There we go. So maybe that's how I want these accordion items to be. So I'm coming in as a designer now, and I'm putting in the final touches. And maybe let's apply that. And I could give extra context too. Sometimes it's good to specify to the AI, do I want just this one accordion item to have this background or all accordion items? Apply this to all accordion items, not just this one. So I'll specify that. In this world, we don't have to have the designer be like, oh, hey, I wanted to have a border here, and can you show me what a background color looks like here? Or, pull this into Figma and back. They could just apply it and see the result. And then they send the follow-up PRs. The developer does the development stuff. They focus on the logic and the structure and all that stuff. And the designer comes in and adds a design detail. So here I could test it out. I can test the accessibility and the details and the transitions. Like maybe I don't like that these are kind of instantly transitioning. Let's say, let's add a transition. When opening the accordion items, let's give them a 0.2 seconds transition of their max heights. And I could be specific or vague, but let's just say maybe max heights 300 pixels by default. I could give it specifics of the easing curves. So I can, as a UX person, even a product manager, go in and refine, get it exactly right, and then apply the updates over the top. What's cool is now we're not going back and forth begging each other to make updates or begging for less red lines. We are just doing the thing and sending the pull request. So you don't have to bother people for improvements. You can just get it. So great. Here's my nice animated accordion that wasn't represented in any designs or any requirements, but that's just, it feels nicer. I love the feel of this animated accordion. Doesn't that feel nicer? It's a little harder to see on the Zoom, but to me, that feels so much nicer. And then the designer can just create the pull request. We also have cases, so let's go in here. Let's talk about this. So here we saved a lot of, so what we're not doing, um, let's kind of have the before and after look. So what we're not doing is going back and forth, designer, developer, designer, developer. Ah, this is just hell. This is our, let's use the X emoji. X, we're not doing this anymore. We are having the designer contribute directly. I mean, my career started, I was originally a designer, and I got so tired of the complications of the back and forth process to get things exactly right for the designs. I just started learning to code. But now you don't have to do that to be able to contribute in this way. So this is one big sort of affordance you get in terms of workflows. Now you take this slow, painful alpha process where everybody starts to hate each other, and eventually you don't stop doing it because you feel like everybody's requirements are met. You stop doing it because you just get sick of doing it. And now we get, an end result. Now we can bring our designer right in and do that. The cool part is this also happens with products too. So we can also go in and have product do some final refinements. What product tends to do is like, do we have all the correct tracking? You can also jump in here and ask questions to the UI. Like, do we have tracking events on the take survey button? If so, what is the event name and properties? So product will jump in and often ask questions without having to waste engineering time. Did you add the tracking? Da, 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 blah, 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 and just ask. And then if it's not there, say, okay, I would like to get a take survey event added to the take survey button, and they can send that pull request. What this means is your velocity can improve substantially because you don't have the developer having to worry about perfection of UX, perfection of every detail. They can put in the important pieces and you can have others refine the final details. If their expertise is not UX, then don't have them obsessed with the UX details, have the actual UX experts do that. We find it's a better use of time, you get a better end result, and it happens a lot faster. The other common workflow, then I'll jump into more questions here, is inverting this. So a really common workflow is instead of starting with the developer, we're going to start with design or product. So rather than this, again, what we're going to do is, and also rather than, let's actually take this as a more waterfall setup. So instead of, let's do it this way. So if we zoom out for the whole workflow is usually product is gathering information, creating a PRD, which is thrown over the wall to design, who is visualizing that, which is sent over the wall to developers to develop, and then it's back to design and product for review. I'll just call it review here. And then we finally get our end results. Ta-da. Now, this could be very time consuming because each part, we're not even getting like a prototype or something with anyone getting their hands on until the very end. And there's a lot of learnings that tends to happen when anyone can get their hands on something. So here's your typical sort of waterfall burn down. Requirements to design, to develop, to review, to launch. Review can include a QA, all that stuff. So what's really cool is, again, this is the hands-on points. The really cool thing is with a product like Fusion, we're all using AI to collaborate directly on the same source of truth, the code. We're almost treating Fusion like a design tool, like Figma on top of code directly, which is the only true thing. Figma itself is just ultimately a set of suggestions, versus when we work on the code, we're actually in the end result state and we're actually moving faster. AI works better with code than it does direct on designs, for instance. What you can do is you can have product or design or developers make a hands-on prototype and go right to an initial, for example, draft either prototype or even draft pull requests. So these can all happen in parallel. Anybody can propose changes. There's a quote I like, which is prototypes are the new PRDs or demos over memos. Get our hands on something as soon as possible. Pass that from product then to design to refine. So we get a prototype immediately. Design refines it. And then developers further refine, is the code correct? Is the code performant? Is the code organized the way we want? And then you can do final review or not, or we just got to our end results. This can massively parallelize the organization and let everyone express ideas much quicker. And the ideas by default are built with the design system, are built with the conventions we care about, and others just refine. So again, design will generally often take a UI that's imperfect in Builder, and rather than having to bring it into Figma and then make your modifications and bring back, design will literally just send pull requests. In a lot of cases for refinements, our design team and our customers, you know, they will just make the UIs better. If I saw a UI here I don't like, any designer can come in and be like, actually, this could be refined. This could be a little bit nicer, and just create pull requests rather than create tickets and we have to triage and debate the tickets forever. They can just send improvements. The PMs could just send improvements to tracking, to copy, to whatever. That's something we see widely adopted. Developers can also be more autonomous and send improvements to things that otherwise they know something can and should be better, but it would need design input because, again, what component do we use? How should we use it? Is it a pop over modal, snack bar, or whatever? Those decisions can be more automated. I won't ramble on this forever. Let's go to more questions here from everybody. Great question here is, when I want to start using Fusion, are there any prerequisites, like particular versions like Node or React? Good question. No. I mean, we technically support any Node.js version, several out of the box, or you can use your own. And it's important to know that any of the Fusion stuff can be used locally. So if you're a developer, you can use like our VS Code or Cursor or Windsurf plugins. Then it just runs on your existing development environment. You don't have to do anything more than just hitting one button. So let's go to a repository. Where is a good one? Let's go to, I had this storybook. What do we want to do? Let's edit our content assistant. So what I can do is, over in my terminal, I can do npm run dev. So I'm right in my normal development environment. We have this content assistant app we've created, and it looks like it runs on port 5173. Now all I need to do is pop over to the builder VS Code extension, works with cursor, etc. Just give it the URL. So this is running a localhost 5173. A dev command is not required. And then we could just launch into build or connect to this app instantly. So there's no specific prerequisite. But if you want to run in the cloud, so your designers and people that do not have the same development setup as you can do it too. Also, no strict prerequisites, but yes, newer versions of Node.js can be great, 18 plus. And here we go. Here is now Fusion running on this content assistant application we have. I can switch into design mode and make any design changes I want. This is something that helps us build out content, and I'm just editing here in my local development environment. Great question. I'm so glad this came up. When I start using Fusion, the question is, if I develop a UI in Builder, can I export back to Figma? And the answer is yes, with certain constraints. So let me get into that. So let's go over here and let's take this FAQ accordion. So I have this really nice FAQ accordion I generated. How do I get it back in Figma? Let me show you. So I am going to go and I am going to switch into design mode. And I actually made a couple changes. So let's just grab everything. So I updated the copy. I added a second button. I added this FAQ accordion. All you got to do is hit Command C or Control C to copy. So we're going to copy it straight from the Fusion environment. Anything in your code can be copied. It doesn't have to be generated by Fusion. And now the cool thing is I can go to the Builder plugin in Figma. So as a reminder, just launch the plugin, search for it, launch it, and go to Import, highlight here, this paste from Chrome, and Command V, paste. And then, bam, here's our stuff that got added. I'm using auto layout mode here. This is handy in certain cases, but auto layout is in beta. And sometimes layout quirks can exist. So I can do the same thing again with auto layout turned off. And then ta-da, we've got our new banner. We have our FAQ here. There's a little bit of overlap. It's actually not taken into account that some of these are like hidden behind others. But you get the idea. A very simple, very brief cleanup can go a super long way here. The caveat is it's not going to come back as components in Figma. Figma's plugin system has certain kind of constraints and limitations that don't allow that. But a really cool use case here, let me take an example. A really, really cool use case is, let's say I don't like this purple anymore. I'm sick of it. Let's copy this. Let's bring it over and paste in here. And let's decide, okay, I want to use a different styling. I actually like this kind of white, off-white styling. So I'm going to copy the styling from something else I have in Figma. I'm going to paste it in here. Oops. Oh, I think it's copying the auto layout details too. Hold on. I don't actually want the, okay, let's actually use auto layout if we want to copy the auto layout settings. This is a little Figma quirk. Bam, go back, auto layout on, paste. There we go. And then this uses a centered layout. So that's what it was applying. So now I'm going to paste that style. Let's see. Let's select the correct frame. I think I want this one. Nope, I want this one, I think. Okay. So I actually just updated the styling to match this. I might want to tweak around the auto layout details a little bit, but you get the idea. To make my life easy, what I'm going to do is just bring these to the bottom, and maybe I'll change this to use a layout. Cool. This is not bad. And so I brought it from Fusion and I brought it in Figma. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to smart export this. So I'm going to grab my new version. I'm going to select it and say, apply my design updates. So here I took the UI I made in Builder. I brought it into Figma. I made design changes, pulling from other assets, libraries, etc. And then I like my result in Figma, and I'm going to tell it to apply the result back. You could apply results changed and modified from the originally from the code or just from the design at all. You can just make any design change and say apply it here. And the cool part is because Builder has this full knowledge of everything here, there we go. There's our beautiful design change. I did that quite quickly, in part because it's pretty easy. Okay, let's keep going through here and answer some more questions. I've lost my Q&A widget. There it is. Cool. Answered that. Kat says, how will this integrate with an existing MUI-based design system? Kat, great question. Let's go into a MUI-based design system example. Here is a MUI-based example. Let's see if I have my linear MCP server connected. Yeah, let me show you a demo I think is really fun. I'm going to go to our linear. And I'm going to grab a ticket that talks about a new dashboard that we want on our customers tab, implement the customers tab. I'm going to grab this, and then I'm just going to paste this and say, do this. Bam. And so here, this ticket describes a new dashboard that we want using totally private APIs, and it defines it all in a ticket. And this will build it using the Material UI design system. You'll see it here shortly. So I'll let that run, and then we'll come back and see that. Um, let's see. Oh, interesting. Good question. So one comment is that, so we have this design with AI feature inside of the Figma plugin too. And one user's finding that they found better results with the plugin than in Fusion. My guess is going to be that context matters most with AI. So the cool thing about the plugin is it can take context from existing designs. And so here I have this design and I can say, make me a contact us page. And if I were to prompt that from scratch in Fusion, make me a contact us page, it'll make a generic contact us page. The critical thing with Fusion is you really need to make sure that you are using proper context. So what I mean by that is here in an existing repository is all the context that you need. It's got components and tokens or just raw styles, whatever format you use is totally fine. Any tech stack, Angular, Vue, doesn't matter too. So here, let's go to Fusion and say, add a contact us page, and I'll say, put a link in the nav and fire that off. And the beautiful thing is this is going to build it using the knowledge of the patterns that are already in the code base. So we're going to set off that swarm of agents to look at other types like contact-ish forms, menus, icons, colors. How do we do everything? And then we're going to build that page with that context. If you're going from the Figma plugin, here's our contact us page added here. This is really not bad. This is using same types of icons, colors, typography. It's still designing out. This one's really cool that we have in Figma because it can build this 100% like real time. You can see it building, which is kind of, I think, really, really fun. And there's our contact page. This is pretty decent. I don't love this header. I do like the rest here. This is pretty good. Now, what we can also do is compare to what Fusion is generating. And it's going to actually take, oh, there we go. Fusion's done generating. And let's look at the contact page there. And very similar. This is using similar. Now, luckily, the form actually works here. We can trigger validation and stuff to run. Email needs to include the @ and I can follow up with additional prompts. But the rule of thumb is this is looking at the entirety of the code and using that. I find with a tiny bit of setup and using your existing repositories, Fusion tends to do a better job ultimately. And luckily, it is real code. So everything created here will hand off as proper React or Vue or Angular components, etc. Let's keep going. So Love the design system and UI. Do you consider having some visual developer also for workflows, APIs? Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. Any visual sort of. So let's go. This is asking about visual developer workflows with APIs, logic, etc. So let me show you that material UI example. Let's see what tab I had that open in. Okay, cool. This was the tab. And so let's go over, and this was what the ticket asks. It looks like it found an error. So just like a developer writing code, you write the code, you check if there's client-side or server-side errors and fix them. The beautiful thing about this integrated environment is it'll automatically find those errors and you just click a button to fix them. So it's going to run through fixing them. But what this ticket defined is I need to use our internal users API. You can also have Fusion update logic, etc. too. In fact, a really cool thing we do is we use Fusion to build Fusion. So here I have Fusion hooked up. Um, and let's make a page to like something in the Fusion UIs. So here's a bunch of stuff. This is literally Fusionception. We're builders editing builder right now. We do it all the time. Anyone on the team can propose changes. We do hackathons, build features, UX improvements, analytics improvements into the platform directly. But let's make some kind of an update here. Um, I actually don't have amazing ideas because I stare at this all the time. Let's actually do this one. So here, and I'm going to switch to design mode so that I can select a specific layer. So I'm going to say in this attached menu, we have and actually, if I go back to interact mode, I can actually open the menu. So you could take any state here and switch to design mode with that state captured, which is kind of cool. So cool, I've got this state and I've got my sort of like Figma-like canvas here. And I could say, take this Chrome link in the menu and put it in the bar below where we have the MCP servers button, etc. Um, let's see if it can gather it just from that prompt. Let me get a little more color in the bar below. One overlaying the code chat inputs. So what I'm telling is I want to take this Chrome button and actually take it out of this menu and make it one of these inline icons. Let's kind of promote it up a level. And here I'm just straight up prompting. And this can include, I'm doing a lot of UI stuff, but you can have it do logic changes. You can say, when I click this button, do this, or add an API for this. And the cool part is if you work in a team, you can use roles and permissions to decide who can edit what. You can say people with a designer role cannot update APIs or business logic or core components. They can only add net new components, for instance. Net new pages. They cannot edit the home page. They can edit the landing pages. Other people can have direct design system access. A cool use case of Fusion is hook it up to your storybook and take component sets and generate new components from component sets in Figma into the design system itself with storybook stories and documentation built in. That one's really cool. And I was literally just chatting with people. We need a demo to show of that. I have done it, but we need to make a nice out of the box demo as well. Let's see if we can get our here we go. Let's give it one more minute and see if we could do this. Now, for context, this is a many million line of code base, this is a massive, massive application in code base. And let's see if it was able to navigate and do what I wanted. And if it doesn't do it on the first shot, there's always more. But there we go. Chrome import. It was removed from the attach. It was added here. Can't emphasize enough. This is a gigantic, complicated code base that thing is working on for us that even Cursor struggles with. Claude Code tends to do best, and Fusion tends to do surprisingly well. Very similar. We take a lot of inspiration from Claude Code and how they work. Let's see. Let me try and prioritize questions because technically we were supposed to end the webinar a few minutes ago. I can go up to the top of the hour and maybe a little bit beyond. Um, so here's a great question from Kat. We have constants and themes defined in a separate repository. Can we integrate those values for code generation and builder? 100%. That thing I was mentioning about workspaces where you can come in here and add additional repositories, just go in here, have a developer do it, or if you're the developer on your team, and then just add that to the repository and it becomes accessible. And then additional instructions, again, are wise here. So tell it, in that other repository, pull the token values or the constants from it. We're going to import from that and we're going to use them in our generated output. You can be as specific as you like in here. Let me grind through a few more of these. Here's a really interesting. There's two interesting ones here. So one is, can you support separate contexts and rules for each project? Yes, 100%. And you can have multiple projects that are in the same repository too. So that's an example we have. So we have our main application and we have also admin tools in the same monorepo. We have separate projects with separate rules, separate access, different people have access. So that's all good. And if you have documentation and things like a README, you can list that. In fact, we can add to the instructions right here that we were showing. I guess I closed it. Let's open it. Here, the agent can look up files, documents, etc. So you could also say, like, when we add a repository, you could say, follow the best practices in readme.md or follow the UX best practices in the storybook folder. The agent swarm can go and find that information and utilize it. So another one is, do you support a cycle of designers in Figma, backend devs in Cursor, the Figma design changes, and we bring the design changes back into the code base like Cursor? Yes, absolutely. So that was the one I showed before about that hero. We changed the hero design and brought it in. That could be anything too, though. So that can be, here's another repository I have. This is Builder Fusion inside of Cursor. This is another application entirely. And let's just, for the sake of argument, assume that we already have something in design. Like this panel I see right here is super boring. So let's pop this over to Figma. I'm just going to import it into Figma because that's going to make my life easier, but that doesn't matter. You could 100% have it be, oops, I need to, it's a little bit weird with the copy rules inside of VS Code plugins. Copy. There we go. And then, so it doesn't matter. You didn't actually have to have this copied. We could have this in our design already. But let's say we want to change the design, like right here. Let's say we want to switch this to be sort of like, we're going to make this font bold and italicized, and we're going to change this to not have, I don't know if I love that sort of like backdrop. So we're going to get rid of that backdrop color. Where's that color coming from? I want you to go goodbye. Okay, let's get rid of that stroke too. Great. And so now I can copy this using Smart Export. So this is an example of, let's say I had design changed from Figma. And now I'm just going to go into Fusion, right within Cursor, right within my local development environment. If it's not already obvious, when we make changes, it just becomes local changes. So I can pop out my sidebar. It looks like I get an org changed. I don't know why. I'm just going to get rid of that. And here I'm just going to say, apply the design changes, paste, and just let it go. And then when the design changes are applied, I'm going to see those as local files here. Here's a good one. If I have a Figma mock for an FAQ accordion, but I have another one in my design system, do I have to tell Builder about existing components? You don't, but what you can do is you can tell Builder to be strict. You can add a custom rule here that says, always, 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 always use our design system components, no matter what. So what's cool about that is the AI is pretty good at inferring, oh, you had an accordion design, but the accordion didn't use components. But you have an accordion component. It might not look identical, but it is the reusable component you want to be using. It will automatically adjust that and it'll output. So here, let me finish my first example here. If we used Figma to update the design, we applied it, good. So here's my design updates. Forgive me, I mean, they're ugly, but you get the idea. They could be much more substantial like in the other demos I've given. But anyway, yeah, the system is good at just automatically reusing components, especially if you tell it to. If you tell it the design system is the most important thing, it'll do that. And like I mentioned, if we're using it within Cursor, it's just updating code inline here. So it changed this, and I can give any additional feedback, which is like, for instance, it modified this to create its own new SVG because the old component, all that stuff I edited was part of the SVG itself, which we detected and we used correctly, and we're using the stack we want correctly. And you can be strict about design tokens too. Always use design tokens, whatever you want. But we can say move the SVG to be its own component in a new file. Stuff like that. Let's see. Let me do. Oh, this is an interesting one. So the comment is Fusion does a great job of referencing already built design systems. How would you go about doing a rebrand with Fusion with a completely new design system? It actually works surprisingly well. And so one thing you can do, there's a couple ways you can do these sort of like rebrands. One is, let's say we're doing a whole migration. In a migration, you can actually reference the old repository in a workspace and have a new repository and say, hey, bring over these pages, component by component, page by page. But when you bring it over, use this new design system, which you can have connected and have, indexed. The agents can have gathered all that information. So it's a really cool use case that can work extremely well. If you want to swap out, another one we've seen that's really cool too is you can swap. If you have old components and new components, you want to move from the old to the new, you can open up Fusion and just say, hey, swap all these components to the new design system, this version or this package or whatever. We've seen great results with that, and incremental migration can be easy too. You can tell in your instructions, hey, for anything new, use the new design system. Here's some examples, and here's the source from Storybook, stuff like that. Let's see. Let me try and rip out. I got 2 minutes here. As a quick note, though, we will follow up with this recording for everyone here. You can reach out to our team, set up a demo if you've got like a kind of full larger team use case, and obviously just jump in and use the product too. We've got a pretty generous free tier, especially for your initial evaluation. We've got self-cert tier starting at like $25 a month. You can just start on and kick the tires on. You could probably answer a lot of questions. We have a forum at forum.builder.io. You can ask you detailed questions, and you can always tweet at me, LinkedIn post at me. I'm Steve8708 in a lot of places. And so I hope this isn't your final place to get questions answered. Let's see. Let's answer this one. How can marketing make use of Fusion? This is like the very first demo that we were talking about, where if you have existing pages, here's one too. So we had this homepage. We updated to have new FAQs, etc. We added this new contact page. You can add as much as you want. This is a pretty simple repo, but you see much more advanced use cases. The thing to know with Fusion, it is a general purpose AI. And so if it's building out whole dashboards and other examples that we've shown before, it can certainly build out landing pages and other things, especially if you have other pages in your code that the AI can look at. It's very good at repeating the types of things that it saw. Let's see if I can answer one other question, and then we can wrap this for now. And we could certainly potentially do another one of these for more questions in the future. Um, um, I'll answer this one. So how do I define my RAG is the question. How can I control it, define my desired behaviors, rules, and conventions? And how do I write tests to verify that things work as expected? So that's where instructions come in. And so in your instructions, you can be as detailed as you like and write out whatever you want the AI to know, to be aware of, to do correctly, conventions, design systems, etc. You can go into insane detail. You can include URLs, links to files and folders, additional repositories. And the cool thing is you can also set up MCP servers. So if you have any of this data exposed over an MCP server, such as this demo that I'm glad we had a chance to wrap up, all of this came from a ticket where what I told it is to build out. The question originally was, can I use Material UI or a fork or customize Material UI? This is an example, customized Material UI. This is all connected to totally internal private APIs. The information came over a ticket. So this is all coming from, the API information came from a repository connected. The requirements came from a linear ticket, and I connected the MCP. And you can provide additional hard-coded rules as custom instructions or resources really, really easily. Let's test the functionality. I should be able to search for anyone named Alexis. Oops, and of course I don't know how to spell. Let's try correctly. Alexis, great, it's doing a search. Can I update part of the ticket? This asked for updating. Everybody's being named Alexis, I think, because our teammate Alexis is updating this data. Let's change this to, you are now Steve Patel, update. Let's see how many Steves we have. And there we go, Mrs. Steve Patel. Okay, I should have used a much more applicable name, but you get the idea. Okay. I don't want to bore everybody and talk endlessly. I'm happy to set up another one of these Q&A sessions. I deeply appreciate the engagement. Feel free to follow up on our forum, reach out to our teams, or even message me on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. Like tweet at me, message, write a post tagging me. Happy to get back to you. Thank you all for all the great engagement. I heavily enjoyed this. I hope you got some useful tips and techniques out of it. And our team was in the chat answering questions as they came up too. So never hesitate to ask things there. Until next time, thank you again, everybody. Hope to see you again.